And thank you all for taking part in this effort to create a meaningful dialogue between designers and manufacturers. And hopefully this will lead to more cross-industry discussions. This is an hour-long session. So let's go around the screen quickly and tell us your name, your title, and your company.
David Davis, founding principal of Rottet Studio.
Hi, I'm Sheri Simko. I'm the Director of North America for Carl Hansen and Son.
I'm Cristi Moore, Design Director focusing on hospitality interiors for the Gensler Atlanta office.
Hi, I'm Simone Vingerhoets. I'm the Executive Vice President of Ligne Roset in the Americas.
I'm Elina Cardet. I'm the Design Director for Interiors, Perkins & Will in the Miami studio.
Hi, I'm Susan Lyons, freezing outside of the city, but I'm the President of Designtex. Nice to be with you all.
What changes might we see in the design and manufacture of furnishings in both existing and new hotels? What changes will we see in the selection of finishes and materials for hotels?
It seems rather obvious, but obviously washable surfaces becomes a huge concern in this new environment. I think the other thing that we've already seen ourselves doing is increasing the specification of indoor-outdoor fabrics and antimicrobial specs. And then I think just the continuation of the trend toward hard flooring in hotels, at least, and that's something I know started a while back, but I think it's going to become even more of a standard now.
I think that design is going to move much towards simplicity in design details and materiality, and this perception of what's clean. I agree. I feel like carpet may be a thing of the past, particularly in guest rooms. The decluttering of things, removal of all decorative pillows, throw blankets, anything that's an extra. And some of that's already started to happen in our design world.
I think also, I know I talked about the washable surfaces, but something that I don't think we've quite figured out yet is nice metal finishes, which I think are particularly susceptible to harsh cleaning compounds.
I also feel that there's been such a movement toward more inward facing, the communal areas and open spaces that are the public spaces, and modularity may allow us to go more outward facing and create smaller spaces. So I'm just curious, maybe more of a modular approach to things, especially from the furnishing side, may start to happen more often.
I would be curious to know from the designer side in the group, since you are obviously the front line with the client, how do you expect the actual distancing to happen in the hospitality industry?
None of our current clients are saying anything about that. But when people equate to revenue square foot within a space, I'm not sure how we're going to be able to achieve that. So I feel like designers are going to have to be creative, think of other ways to make revenue happen for our clients if we're reducing, the number of people within an F&B venue and such, which programming requires, based upon a certain number of keys in a hotel. So yeah, we're going to have to get really creative there.
What Simone said about what are the clients saying, and I think I would agree with Cristi. I don't think we have some ongoing hotel projects in concept design, in fact, and I'm sort of surprised that this topic hasn't even really come up in terms of what they expect us to address in this new world. So that's kind of interesting. I know obviously there's a lot of operational issues that they're going to face, and we can get into some of those maybe later. But yeah, there's been an interesting lack of dialogue on that topic.
So I just wanted to kind of interject and say there's a short-term kind of transitional approach, and then the long-term, right? Once there is a vaccine and once we all come back to a new normal, but it will be a little bit more what we're used to. But in the meantime, we are doing some space analysis in terms of the food and beverage. even thinking of color-coded chairs. So then it's very simple to kind of organize the guest sitting on a color-coded based on that distance. So we're beginning to look into that, not just for hospitality, but for workplace as well, how people go back to work. So we are looking at those things as a temporary transitional approach to distancing.
The other thing I wonder is if in the hospitality world, will they then also be looking at adopting healthcare procedures for not only cleaning, but also disinfection, which adds a whole nother layer of activity to what a facility might want to do. I think the good news is there's a lot of materials that are available now that are bleach cleanable, that look actually very nice. They're not sort of aesthetically challenged. You can get products that you know have a more welcoming kind of residential feel. But in order to really say to a user that, yeah, this product has been cleaned and disinfected, you know, that requires one additional step for the facility. And just also curious from the designer standpoint whether that issue has come up at all as well. Will hospitality be going to the level of disinfection as they do in hospitals? Obviously, it's less critical issue because you're not going to necessarily maybe need to go to the level of a healthcare facility, but I do think people are looking for some surety around the fact that the product has been at least sanitized or disinfected.
What are manufacturers doing to address new concerns about the cleanliness of surfaces? Will antimicrobial materials become the new standard?
I really hope not. I mean, the thing about antimicrobials is we've been moving away from them in healthcare because there is absolutely no proof that they have any efficacy for cleaning, for killing microbes, and that there is a feeling in healthcare where obviously hospital-acquired illnesses are a really big deal, that they are moving away from them also because there's the fear that people think if there's an antimicrobial in there, I don't have to go through my steps for cleaning and disinfection. And the antimicrobials don't kill viruses, they only kill bacterial forms. So antimicrobial has actually nothing to do with COVID-19 in terms of a positive outcome. So, I mean, you're adding chemistry when you don't really need to, and really just cleaning and disinfection is a much better from all the research we've done over the last few decades of doing healthcare work. So I think there are lots of options, but I really just hope we don't get into this, let's slap an antimicrobial on everything, because it's bad stuff.
Yes.
The EPA calls antimicrobials are classed as pesticides by the EPA. So
Wow. Okay. So that's really interesting that you brought all that up, because I put some of these questions out to my staff because I was curious about feedback from them and what they'd seen. And someone actually came back and said, you know, manufacturers are now stepping back and starting to say that these coatings are more harmful to our health than anything else. So it's interesting that you actually said just that.
And the second part to the antimicrobial discussion is building surfaces, is that we still don't know the long-term effects, right? So there's a lot of white papers out there that are really warning against that use. So Susan brings a really important point. So it's like almost feels good to say, oh, let's just fix everything with doing the antimicrobials, but it's really not enough science has been done, and it's definitely something to be warned against. So in healthcare, to Susan's point, we've been not using those types of finishes, interesting enough.
We've just been also just making sure from a simplicity perspective that we're just educating and communicating just maintenance standards. So when you ship something, that information is there. If you are communicating that it's easy information to get. I mean, that's always been sort of in the background, but I think it's in front in a lot of people's minds now. So just making sure that information is accessible.
How will the current focus on social distancing carry over into our post-pandemic lives? And how will it affect the future design of public and amenity spaces for hotels and condominiums?
You know, so I have the unique privilege of living with someone that's in the hotel business. He runs a chain of hotels. And this has been a discussion that I've been having with him actually quite a bit, both just in terms of design, and operations. And I was curious about some of the things he was implementing in not only hotels that were obviously closed right now, but will be reopening, and those projects in development. And he said that they were looking at various things like screens at the front desk. And I'm not happy to hear any of this, obviously, because my biggest fear about this is that we can't return to normal, and that scares me a lot, because human interaction obviously is so important. And then, of course, I think it's already been mentioned about the increased spacing between tables in restaurants, doing things like eliminating blankets in public areas and the guest rooms, those things that people might see as less than sanitary. I think someone else in my office suggested maybe there's going to be fever checking in hotels, just so you know whether or not someone might be sick. But one of the, and then something else, and I don't know if this, and I apologize, Beth, if this steps over into one of the other questions, but the other thing that their hotels are doing is they're going to space out the time between guests in rooms. So for instance, ACE will not be booking a room with less than 2 days between guests. And Airbnb also announced this morning that they were going to require 72 hours and what they call a booking buffer. And my question was, well, how can you do that? Because it's going to be a huge effect on revenue. And the answer, sadly, is that these facilities will be at such a low occupancy for the near future that all of this will be possible.
But even though your clients haven't been talking about it, what do you think, you as the designers?
Well, I think it's very challenging, because the whole notion of hospitality is feeling welcomed at a public space and feeling safe. So how do you communicate the sense to your guests that this facility is clean, has been disinfected, that you have UV lights and perhaps in the HVAC system, that you've implemented a ducted return like hospitals in the hotels? I mean, it is vast what we're confronting here. And as designers, how do we really help our clients? I don't think we have all the answers, right, at this point.
Well, I'm seeing some of the hotel brands already coming out with documents where they're going to have new cleanliness guidelines. You know, there's going to be signage. As you enter, there will be a screening. Hotel staff will have gloves on. And they will be making all of these procedures public, so that there is this perception that things are clean and they're following the rules. Like, they're not going to be allowed to, open the doors for valet. And I wonder, are people going to become much more protective of their personal belongings and their luggage and not let someone escort it to the room? There's going to be people opening the doors for you if they're not automatic. Is there going to be a person in the elevator to push the buttons for you in existing hotels, or are we all going to be wearing gloves? I mean, there's just a lot of speculation, but I think it's just that perception, and that operators are already making plans to ensure that we do feel safe and protected.
The next question is about what you've been talking about, and that is that hospitals have been borrowing from the hospitality playbook to create warm and welcoming hospital interiors. What may hospitality now borrow from the hospitals and still create a warm and welcoming environment?
Well, I guess I just mentioned two initiatives that we're doing right now in terms of the ducted return scenarios, the UV lighting, heavy filtration systems as well. And that is basically what you don't see. Besides what we started talking about, furniture that looks like it's easy to clean and doesn't have a lot of fuzzy details, so that perceives that it's easy to maintain and to clean. But in terms of making those infrastructure changes, we're now kind of quickly changing our design strategies in two projects that we're working on. So that is one example.
Yeah, I agree with the clean air issue. I think that's going to be a huge one, not just because of that, but just because of allergens as well. And I think that certainly with COVID, we see that like allergies probably can even complicate those issues. So I think clean air, absolutely. I think the other thing that we're going to see, which we already see in the marine industry because we also design a lot of cruise ships, is hand washing stations. And obviously cruise ships already had them and have had them for years at like the entrances to restrooms and restaurants. But I think on ships, we're going to be putting them in a lot more places than they've been in the past. And I think that's going to be the case in all hospitality areas. You know, it's interesting. We finished designing the Belmont Cap Juluca in Anguilla last year. And one of the things we did was we did a ceremonial hand washing station at the entrance to the restaurant. But it, like, talk about like good timing, because it had nothing to do with COVID. Obviously, it was more just about ceremony. But I guess that's one way that you can actually take advantage of these requirements in a design way and do something special with them.
I don't know a lot about hospitals and such, but if you think about it, the care is very focused. So if we look at how they operate, you know, you're the patient and then you have your family, your circle of family around you, and then your providers taking care of you. So maybe hospitality looks at smaller clusters of targeted focus for guests and their friends within the public spaces, perhaps. Think in terms of the actual experience rather than just what our finishes or materiality might change to be.
I mean, I honestly, in this conversation, I feel the solution has to come through technology and new inventions, because I feel if we entirely leave it on the human aspect and the cultural aspect of who's going to wash their hands and who doesn't, I feel we've seen through this pandemic and by looking at the various cultures in the various countries that it is going to be very difficult by relying on the human being to help and solve that problem. And even if we have the chemical aspect in the materials, I truly believe it has to come through UV lights and new technology that is invented to really protect us from a situation that we are in at the moment. Because, I mean, I don't want to, you know, it's going to be the elephant in the room, but I'm sure we've all seen those videos from the hospitality side and, you know, how is your room being cleaned? Is there a different rag used for, you know, a bathroom surface to a kitchen surface? And I mean, we all know the stories behind it. And I feel the big question is, how do we circumvent that?
Yeah, I think Simone's right that the technology is going to be a huge thing. Clearly, touchless technology is going to be one of the biggest things. You know, it's interesting. I drove into the city for the weekend to pick up a few things in my apartment, and the only place I could think to put my car, because my garage was closed, was in a garage that was open. And you find yourself in these situations literally thinking about every surface that someone might have touched before you. The technology is definitely going to be big. I was just reading that in Abu Dhabi bus station, they've introduced these germ-killing gateways, and believe this is an extreme that I hope we don't go to, that literally as people pass through, it mists them with a sanitizing mist that supposedly doesn't sting and dries very quickly. And they're implementing this throughout the country.
The fact is, hospitality has embraced technology, such as smartphone keys for rooms, automated lighting systems. What, in the whole sphere of what if, how else do you envision technology being creating tools for healthy hospitality spaces?
I think we've already started embracing a lot of it, you know, flyby check-ins, the automated key cards, automated lighting. Some of our clients now that are designing, preparing to build hotels, or even incorporating the personal concierge like Alexa and such. So I think all of this is going to accelerate that, possibly into brands that wouldn't normally have been able to afford to incorporate it. It's going to be one of those standard must-haves.
I was trying to imagine what it would be like to be in a bar in a hotel, and you know, you lose that entire vibe and sociability by sitting far apart. And I was thinking about those restaurants that have a lot of the sushi restaurants that have integrated those conveyor belts. I have this little image of my drink rolling down on a conveyor belt to me. So it could, anything's possible, I guess.
Well, I think I'm an optimist, and I believe that we're going to eventually return to a situation where we do feel comfortable being close to people. And it may take a little bit, but I think the key is just the lessons we're learning about sanitizing our hands and being aware of how things spread. But I'd like to think that social distancing is a temporary.
One question I wanted to ask you guys is if you feel like some of the other trends that have been incorporated into hotels within the past couple of years, we might be backtracking for a bit. I mean, small things like, you know, how we just got rid of all the tiny individual shampoo bottles, and they've gone to larger communal shampoos in the shower. And we've been designing ledges to fit, you know, a 3.5 inch diameter bottle. Do you think we're going to be doing away with that for the time being? And then you think about the refreshment zones out in a quarter that are public access, and they've got the bowl of fruit that anybody can go grab, and you open the fridge and get your own bag of ice. So are all of those going to become dead zones at this time? Or are we just going to have hotel people standing there constantly cleaning it so that you feel like you can touch it, and you don't know who's touched it before you, and dispensing your own water and such? Are there any others you can think of that might become dead zones for the time being?
Well, just the check-in process, I think the whole keyless system and using the smartphone is going to, it's starting to happen, but as you said earlier, it's just going to be the way it is. Do you want to touch that pen and make any kind of signatures at a desk? Do you even want to, does a hotel even want someone to be that close to someone at a desk? And I think that, you know, you're also mentioning about the hotel starting to look at new cleaning initiatives. So the star rating for hotels, maybe there'll be some sort of new addendum to that, or a new type of rating, so you feel really comfortable as a consumer that you would be selecting a hotel that meets your safety and health requirements.
I want to come back to what David said earlier on, where what we are seeing, and I feel what we will be seeing more and more, is using the outdoor fabrics indoors, so that the fabric is actually cleanable with bleach, but you have the same kind of comfort and you have the same kind of decorative look of the fabric. So it doesn't look like a vinyl, it's still a woven textile, basically. So that's what I see we will be seeing more, and that's really following the trend that has already started. We have not seen any antimicrobial tags or anything that is sewn into the product, no.
You know, you made me think about these stickers. Reminds me of traveling as a kid across the Southwest and staying in motels where everything was wrapped in, the drinking glasses were wrapped in plastic and had a sticker saying sanitize for your safety. The toilet had a banner across it that said sanitize for your safety. And that was obviously back in the 60s.
Do you think interior designers will want more digital meetings now instead of visiting stores and showrooms and seeing representatives?
You know, that's a really great question, and something that we've had to learn very quickly to deal with. And I think that programs like Material Bank are going to become more popular and viable since they send finishes overnight. I think that digital presentations have opened the door for more convenient opportunities to meet with vendors that aren't in your city. I think it's going to cut down on the need for travel. I think that even local showrooms can take advantage of this stuff because it's hard to mobilize an entire office to go to a showroom. So maybe some of that will be replaced. But in the end, we're a tactile, you know, group of people, and we'll need to touch and feel things. So I think we're going to end up with a combination of both, whereas before we might have always been in person. And I think it's just opened the door to doing that as another way of doing it.
And to segue in that, the material bank has been incredible this last few weeks, but I have to say personally, for me, the relationships that I've had that are really good relationships with those reps in those companies that I trust have been there, you know, to supply FedEx to my house, the samples, or to my team, so that we can actually get them in our hands to see, to feel, to touch. And then we're trying to do these photographic presentations to our clients. But it's interesting because I think that in this new temporary situation, I'm gonna still be thinking that it's temporary, is the new vendors that tend to just drop by an office and introduce themselves are gonna have the hardest time. But it's having those relationships with those amazing reps for years, and those people that you really rely on that can really solidify moving forward in terms of getting things done. I mean, at least that's what the experience in the last 6 weeks have been, or 7 weeks now.
For us, I feel like our designers, they express a lot of frustration with scheduled product meetings, vendor meetings. It breaks their workflow and project focus. And it's one thing for the rep to come in and answer some project needs that's been requested, but then they turn into a dog and pony show that, you know, may last 15, 30 minutes and such. And so there's something about the digital access that the people can go in and get what they need, have conversations, and then get off. It's not as hard, I guess, to break away from that kind of dialogue as opposed to a personal one when someone comes in. And I agree that the reps that we have relationships with, you know, those are the ones that we call. And as great as Material Bank has been for our team, I worry that our sources are limited, and we aren't accessing the entire wealth of materials and finishes that we usually get have access to. But again, that will grow with its success. But yeah, and going to showrooms, I can't remember the last time I had the time to go to a showroom. That was a luxury back in the day to get to do that. So it's those reps that come in every single day that pop in and out with whatever we need that really are inspiring and keep us going.
This has been going on for 10 years. They've just seen this with all the digital tools that are available now. And I feel like the page is going to really turn, at least this year, especially with how, as a manufacturer, we can respond. I mean, as long as we can keep our goals as inspiring and supporting and servicing and enhancing the creative process, I think that's where we have to keep our focus. And our showrooms, we still need our showrooms. We think we still need our showrooms to some degree, because they become sanctuaries and they become places for gathering. And I know that may sound right now, how do we even imagine that? And we've been working internally about talking about that. How do we bring people back together in a safe way? And people are very excited to, of course, get out and do something else. So if you can think of it more of as a sanctuary or a learning center, and how does it enhance or support the efforts? I'm hoping that's what we can do at Carl Hansen with all of this going on.
One of the things that scares me is the new people up and coming that don't have those long-term relationships. How do they establish them if you're not going to see them?
I think they're going to establish them with the younger designers, because what I see from the team as well, that they're learning through, or we are all learning through this new digital communication, that you don't need to be physically in front of somebody to create a relationship. And I feel that was something we would have never learned if we wouldn't have been in this situation, because everybody still believed, no, you have to get on a flight to create this relationship. I don't think that's the case. I see from my team what they all took home, and I fully agree, they took the material samples home and they're sending material samples, but they have happy hours. Everything I feel just continued. They have young designers where they provide mental support at the same time, and they have these little breakout groups, and there are relationships that are currently being created, and on top of it, it's all less time consuming for everyone because it's this quick half an hour, you have a chat, and I see it in my team. They are continuously scheduling this, and it's a completely new environment. It's very interesting to see, but I mean, they have happy hours. They use the digital services. They order a bottle of Prosecco through Drizzly. They send it to their designers, and then they get together for an evening chat.
Yeah, I think this, we've learned about a tool here that's not going to go away. And I'll say, for instance, that it's opened things in my personal life. Brad and I, we just this past Friday did a happy hour with family. And, before it would have just been individual calls, but we all came together and saw each other on the screen. And it was like a great way to visit with people that we simply didn't take advantage of before, I think.
How do you keep motivated? What are you learning from this experience that you feel you will adopt in the future?
I think what keeps me motivated is the knowledge that I'm going to eventually return to the studio and be with my team again. And I think that the biggest thing that I've learned from this experience is the need to invest in home infrastructure for teleworking. Somehow we've made it work, but there are things I think I would do different if I knew that I would be working from home. And I think that I'll feel better about when it's good for me to work from home versus going into the office. Maybe we'll all be more acceptable of it, but certainly I can think of several ways or things that I need to do to make this even easier for me.
For me, I know we're all isolated and separated from our team, but staying connected, just as you're talking about, we have happy hours, we have water coolers and leadership touch faces. I mean, constantly to see various faces across the office. And just knowing that we're all in it together and I still have that team beside me is really a good feeling, as well as the projects that haven't gone on pause. Those have been nice because you have that focused goal of you're still trying to design a fabulous project. And then I've tried to keep myself busy around the house, keep those personal projects going too. I've got all my drawers organized now and, made a trip to Goodwill. And so that's what keeps me motivated.
I had every intention to do that, but I have done none of it, I have to say. But I mean, what I've found interesting about this is, like, to me, it's an incredible design assignment, right? So we're figuring out every day how to maintain our contacts with our colleagues. For us, in being in the product development side of things, like, what are the pivots now that we make, given with the situation that we're in? How can we make smarter products that have more utility but still deliver some poetry? And so we've basically thrown our whole plan out, and we're kind of starting all over again. And that's, on the one hand, daunting, but also super exciting. So yeah, it's been really interesting from that standpoint.
A lot of people have been saying the correction, it's okay, well, can we count this as the correction? And it's almost from the financial markets, or just even in general, okay, it's here, let's get over it and get moving on. And as you're saying, just to have that chance to pivot, it's motivating to have this new open landscape to say, I've got to make changes, I've got to move forward, how do I do that? And it's, in a lot of ways, it's can be scary, but it's very refreshing in the same way.
I feel like I've gained a greater appreciation of time. I feel like there's so much more of a pronounced emphasis on time. How much time has been wasted, commutes to work, how much we put into getting dressed in the morning, all of it eliminated working from home. I feel like nights never end. I wake up and think, oh my gosh, I've still got 3 more hours I could sleep. So to reallocate what we do with our time so that it is more rewarding and impactful moving forward. And I've also found that there's an easier work-life balance for me. Whereas if I worked at the office and then you commute home, and then when you get home, you immediately get your computer out and you keep working. Well, I don't do that now. For me to turn it off and on here, I get up and go sit down, and then when it's 5:30 or 6 and I finish what I need to do, I get up. And I don't find myself going back to the computer.
For me, this has been an incredible opportunity to really think and have a little bit quiet time, and to think about the purpose and the goals of what we do as designers, as architects, and how everything that we do can actually help our clients and those end users. Every aspect of the decision-making process, of the proposals, of everything we're putting in front of the clients has gotten like a deeper meaning for me during this time, in terms of sustainability, in terms of everything. So we're kind of, I don't know, from a personal perspective, has been giving me a chance to really think about the purpose of design.
Well, I have to say, I'm a big believer in schedules, and I've kept schedules since the beginning. So for me, there wasn't that much of a change, because everybody has a schedule, everybody gets a reminder here in the family. So that worked pretty well. I have to say, what is refreshing is to really be able to heads down finish projects without interruption. So I definitely feel I'm more efficient. I'm more efficient in developing new ideas because those interruptions don't happen. For me, one concern is really all those little restaurants, the little vendors that might not make it through this crisis. So I'm coming back to what I've done over years, and then just because it gets too stressful and you need to keep things going on a daily basis, everybody moves to Amazon. So that's something I'm focusing more on, to say, there's this little restaurant which I'm going to go to once a week, because I want to make sure I support them, and I want to make sure I pay cash to guarantee that contingency and that they are going to be there in the future. So very much on that personal level, trying to preserve and help others as well through this crisis.
I think it's there's definitely that time to focus a little better when you're at home, and you can, if you're fortunate enough to have older children and not have 2-year-olds climbing all over you. So I guess I can say I'm fortunate there, but you do have that time to focus a little bit more. But what does take more time, which is very interesting, is I could have had 3 conversations getting a cup of coffee in the office, and now it's in 45 minutes, an hour catching up with someone, and it's great. It's wonderful conversation, but it does, at the end of the day, I'm like, wow, I was really busy today, and I had 5 really meaningful, focused thought processes going on, but I also spent a lot of time with Zoom and catching up with our team and speaking with our customers.
I'm curious, I think the most frustrating thing for me as a design director, you have your designers developing projects and materials and finished palettes. The ones where we already had palettes developed beforehand at the office and they brought them home and were able to talk through those. We FaceTime and we're holding them up here on, GoToMeeting and such. And then samples will be sent to my house and their house and we're looking at them together. But for those projects that it's just fresh started and they've had to accumulate a lot of stuff. And for someone like me who's very tactile and visual and wants to touch, I just want to reach my hands through the screen and I see all the stuff on their beds and I can't help them do it like that really quick. You're going, oh, you see that little fabric over there? And you just can't do it. And I'm finding it very frustrating. How are y'all overcoming that challenge, if you are?
So I have to confess that I have one of those shields, the plastic shield ones, plus the mask. And for one of the new projects, like you're saying, I drove to my colleague's house. She had everything, all the options, and we were both with mask and shield. And we had to work in person. We broke the distance, and then we washed the hands, we disinfected everything. We didn't touch each other, but we were there selecting together, and that was the only way I could think of. But yeah, using the tools of the coronavirus fashion tips.
I hear you. It may have to come down to that for me too.
How'd you get the shield?
My sister is an anchor at a news at Univision here in Miami, and she actually had them done, like Univision gave them to the anchors, and so she got all our family, she had these shields made for us from her work.
I'm optimistic that things will go more back to normal than I think some people think they will, because I think as humans, we just crave that connection and interaction, and I think it will just inevitably happen, and we'll slowly be more comfortable.